Okay, hey, so good afternoon to everybody in the Europe, I guess, and this side of the world, and good morning to everybody in on the West Coast, but on the Pacific time zone. And thanks to Graham and Marty from Change State for joining me, who are based in Seattle. So it's 8 in the morning at Seattle. Really appreciate you guys getting up so early. So we're going to talk about talent insights and how that feeds into talent pipelining. We're going to, look at really how you kind of develop and drive, strong recruitment marketing strategies and the power that they can bring. Really about, answering that question is, how is it that we're going to, try to attract more people like them? Okay. And, in the kind of summary of what we're going to talk about today, we talked about, that recruitment marketing messages are often just driven by the exec team. They're not really grounded in what employees actually think about working for your organization. So, it's critical to produce content that reflects what great employees love about working for you so that you can attract more people like them. So we're going to cover some things today about how you understand employee personas, how to categorize the employee experience, how to create effective email campaigns, the type of dynamic content that you can use within your campaigns, and then how you understand engagement levels and the stage of interest and their intent, whether they're cold or they're warm, and how they're hire ready, how you can drive automation through a lot of this kind of area, and how you can do personalization at scale. So I'm delighted to be joined by Graham and Marty, co-founders of Change State. We're going to keep this pretty conversational. Marty's going to take us through, some of the recent thinking and work that they've done in this area. We're going to add questions in the chat as we go along, and we can take those live or have them at the end. We're recording this, so we'll share the on-demand version with everybody afterwards, and we've got to finish at 4:45 sharp. Okay, so hey, Graham, Marty, do you guys want to introduce yourself and kick off? Yeah.
Yeah, of course. So I'm Graham Thornton. Marty's the other one that you hear most, and then I have a bipolar dog that you'll also hear in the background. So my background is we co-founded Change State about 19 months ago. We're a recruitment marketing agency, but we think about things a little bit different. My background is very heavy in the HR tech selection. I spent about a dozen years helping take software to market in the pre-hire space at CareerBuilder. And I've known Marty since we started a lawn mowing business back in high school, back in Northwest Indiana. And this is our second business together. Marty spent 15 years in consumer brand research. And, we thought that, there is really an opportunity in the recruitment space to combine deep understanding of your HR tools and technology and how consumer, brand research and messaging can help influence an effective recruitment marketing strategy. So, we do media buying and all of the regular recruitment marketing stuff, but, what we really get excited about are some of these talent insights projects and how we can get a lot more into, the deep messaging pieces behind an effective marketing strategy. So, Marty, what'd I miss?
No, I don't think you missed anything. Thanks, Scott, for having us. As Graham mentioned, my background is in consumer brand research, consumer brand strategy. I've been in this world, the recruitment marketing, talent acquisition world for about 1.5 years now. And one of the big surprises, I think, is that I don't think that the TA organizations within a company are necessarily taking the same systematic approach to understanding who their target customer is. I use the term customer loosely, the customer is the candidate in this case, but we do think there are a lot of parallels between the best thinking that's going on the consumer marketing side and a lot of things we can learn and apply to the recruitment marketing side. And we're going to share you some of those tricks and tips today.
Cool. So two pieces that I'll kind of lead with to kick us off here, and then I'm going to turn it into Marty for much of the details. So we think that there's really two pieces that go into strong recruitment marketing. On one side, you think of top of funnel research, and you want to make sure that the messages that you're sending and putting out there publicly resonate with your target talent, and you want to find the people that are most likely to thrive at your organization. Gloves. So what that means is, hey, if you look on the left-hand side, we're looking at employee perceptions by role grouping. So that means we might break down the engineering group and stack rank that against your sales organizations. Yeah, Marty, let me mute this and you take over for a second.
Yeah. I think that what's Graham's saying here, there's a natural pairing between talent insights and candidate nurturing, things that are happening at organizations like Candidate.ID. A lot of organizations will do some high level research. Most organizations have employee satisfaction surveys. They may be running them once a year. They may be running them 3-4 times a year. A lot of people are doing even pulse surveys, and they get outputs, something that look like this spider diagram. It may not be presented in this exact fashion, but we're looking at how we're perceived among our employees across different role groupings or departments. So you can see that we've got a spider diagram here showing customer service, HR, sales, engineering, all represented by a different colored line on this spider diagram. This is a very interesting, useful place to start. And this is kind of very top of funnel, like the 20,000-foot view, we sometimes call it. We certainly applaud organizations that are looking at their data at this level of granularity. Where we find some of the most powerful insights come from, however, is actually going 1 or 2 steps even deeper. So not just looking at it by a role grouping or department level, but actually drilling into an individual department to understand what is the profile of an employee who is thriving at our organization in the sales department, for one example. The more we can know about that person, what they love about us, and what the profile of that person is in terms of what their life stage is, where they're spending their time online, what their expectations are of employers. The more we can know about them, the better we can target people like them who are going to thrive in our organization as well. And so we think the talent insights research, and we'll get into some of the details here in a minute, this is really an important first step, and it exists at the top of the funnel to figure out who is it that we're actually trying to target before you then take those insights and plug them into a candidate nurturing tool where we're actually delivering that content that is resonating with the kind of talent we want to attract. And then we can begin the talent pipelining process and understand who's interacting with the content, who should we be calling first as we look through these piles of candidates. One other just quick note, this is another example of one of these 20,000-foot views. Oftentimes for clients, we'll provide what we call a talent brand scorecard, or you might call it an employer brand scorecard. Here we're looking at very high level metrics. Sometimes we call these brand affinity metrics. So you included on these are often things like net promoter score, satisfaction with this placeholder company we're calling Acme Company. How long employees have actually been working at the company, and how long they're planning to stay. And we're looking at this again across role groupings. This is really valuable, but it alone doesn't really tell you who you're actually targeting with your recruitment marketing message, because what we really want to do is not just understand the health of the organization within each department. What we really want to know is who are these promoters, for example? Who are the folks that are extremely satisfied with their employment experience? What do we know about them, and what drives them to continue working for us? And how can we use that insight to attract people that are like them? So I think, Scott mentioned this in the intro. Oftentimes, organizations are kind of shooting from the hip when they think about the messages that they should be putting on their career sites, in their job descriptions, in their testimonial videos, employee videos. And oftentimes this comes from the C-suite or the executive team. People have been around for a while. They think they know why people like working for us. They don't necessarily bother to do this deep insight work with the actual satisfied employees in the organization. And I think the predictable output that you get by doing that sort of gut, basing it on your gut feelings, is you tend to get some pretty generic messages. So we've put some up here, and I think that we've all seen these kinds of messages on career sites. Things like, come here and realize your full potential. One of the ones that makes us cringe is our people are our most valuable asset. Not that these aren't true statements, but they really don't communicate clearly at all why someone should want to work for you, what's special about your organization, what it is about you specifically that would want to make people contribute a significant portion of their lives to working for you. So what we're going to do today is show you how to get beyond some of these these kinds of lore that exist in companies and get very tactical and specific with the messages you're using to attract talent. How do we go about this? Well, the first thing is you have to identify your happiest employees. We won't spend a lot of time on how you go about this, but what this is, it's really called a segmentation analysis or persona creation. So again, my background's in consumer brand research. This is pretty standard behavior on the consumer side. Scott mentioned it earlier, consumer brands are spending a lot of time thinking about every touch point in the consumer journey. So it might be the packaging, it might be the email communications that go out, it might be your customer service experience. All of these things go into creating a very specific experience that's targeted on their happiest, most loyal customers. Well, on the recruitment marketing side, we're trying to do a similar thing. And oftentimes when you're trying to define who these happiest employees are, we use 3 metrics. It's a combination of satisfaction. So how happy are people that with their employment experience? You know, most people include that in an ESAT survey, just as you might guess by the name, employee satisfaction. And then we also combine that with tenure metrics. The reason we do that is because what we're really looking at is a mix of attitudes and behaviors. So it's one thing to say, I'm really thrilled at this organization, but the reality is some people that are happy might be planning to leave. You know, in the case of high volume recruiting, you may have a lot of folks who took the job just as a job, you know, say they're on a college break, for example, and they want to just take a job for 3 months. That may not be the kind of talent we really want to attract, because, you know, it turns out it takes 6 months to actually realize an investment on all the training that goes into training that folks. So what we're interested here when we create these talent personas is looking at a combination. What we're looking for is the people who are both happy with their employment and plan to stay often. And that's kind of what goes into this. And then we have to figure out, you know, what makes them different or unique. This includes a whole array of different metrics. You can think at the very high level, it's about demographics. You know, what do we know about them in terms of their gender identity, their ethnic background, you know, their age, where they live, those sorts of questions. But where it really gets interesting is when you think of some more emotional, more detailed persona dimensions, things like life stage. You know, are these people who recently graduated from college? Maybe they recently moved into a new home or got married. And what are they expecting out of their employers? You know, what are their number 1, 2, and 3 expectations that are must-haves out of employers? And, you know, you can put some other things up here as well, but I think it really comes to life here in the next few slides where we show you a case study that we did recently for a client. So this was an example that, you know, we blinded it, of course, but this was an example of a talent insight study that we did for a high volume company. So they're hiring a lot of entry-level workers. And as you might expect in an organization like this, attrition can be a problem. You know, they're actually hiring lots of people all the time, but they're also losing a large number of them because these are people that are, you know, they're young people at an early stage in their career, and they may not stick around all that long. And what we did was we applied some of that thinking that I just shared on the prior slide. We looked at how we can combine some of these satisfaction and tenure metrics to identify 4 really distinct personas of the employee population. And this is going to help us guide their recruitment marketing strategy, what messages we should actually be focused on going forward. So you can see here that we have 4 personas, and there's the young and optimistic is the first one. We identified this group of employees who started recently at Acme Company. They tend to be on the young side. They're very excited about their future, and they plan to stay for 3 or more years. So this is a high potential target. I mean, this is exactly the kind of talent we want to attract. The question then is, what do we know about them? You know, who is this person, and what messages can we be using to find more people like them? I won't go into all of the personas, but just worth mentioning that we did identify a kind of a secondary older group as well called the established and content. We just came up with these names. You know, you can call these whatever you want. It's usually helpful to put a handle on them, if you will, so the organization can really get buy-in into what these personas are and bring them to life within the recruitment organization. But anyway, the established and content group is a bit older. These are people who are more settled in their careers, more likely to be over 35 years old, not necessarily so focused on advancement. They're more focused on having a stable paycheck to provide for their families. And as you'll see in a moment, they have different expectations of their employer, and we would have a different recruitment marketing strategy for reaching them. So here's just one example output of a talent insights study. So this is this young and optimistic group and all the things that we might know about them. So I mentioned a few of them on the prior slide, but you can see a much more detailed portrait of who this target talent is. They tend to be on the younger side. In this particular case, a lot of diversity in this group. You know, they were like 70% non-white, which is, you know, a big finding in itself, certainly relevant to the current times in the US and other places. You know, what else do we know about them? Well, we know where they found out about our company. In this case, it was Indeed. This is particularly good to know for future recruitment marketing efforts. You may find that the target talent that you're really trying to attract is more likely to have come from certain sources than others. So, in the future, if we're going to look for more people like this, well, we have a pretty good idea of where to start. We also got information about where they like to spend their time online. So as you might expect with a younger audience, these folks are spending a whole lot of time on YouTube, Facebook, and Snapchat. This has direct implications for some of the social targeting campaigns that we do to reach this type of talent. Zooming out a bit, what do we know about their lives? Well, turns out these people are people that are in transition. Many of them have recently moved out of their parents' home into a new apartment, and they're very optimistic and excited about their career at this organization. And what are they looking for? Well, it turns out they're looking for opportunities for advancement. They're looking for opportunities for commissions and bonuses, and they're looking for some help. They want to be trained. That was a really appealing thing to this particular segment. And on and on. You can see on the right here, we get into some of more of the emotional dimensions of the experience, how they like to feel at work, some of the perks within Acme that are particularly compelling to this persona. And we'll get into the brand pillars in a moment here when we show you what an employer brand perceptual map looks like. But this is the idea here. Going from just looking at one of those static tables where we're saying, great, our NPS score is 50 for engineering and it's 45 for sales. Here we're really drilling in on what that person actually looks like, getting beyond the numbers to actually bring that person to life so we know who we're marketing to. And then often in these studies, you get some more qualitative feedback as well. Two of the more powerful questions that you can include in a talent insight study are, what surprised you about working for XYZ company, in this case, Acme company? The reason we like that question is because, in the talent branding or employer branding space, kind of the holy grail is this idea of authenticity. And what that means is that we're telling people what we're telling people on our career sites and our recruitment marketing collateral, what those messages are things that when someone comes to spend time in our organization 6 months later, a year later, they say, what, that was an accurate representation of what it's like to work at this organization. And so by asking this question, what surprised you about working for us, we can uncover opportunities, maybe things that people love about us that we're not hitting hard enough in our recruitment marketing messages. We can also uncover things that are disappointments, areas where maybe we're over-promising and we should tone down the dial a bit in terms of what we're making promises about on our career site. And then the other thing we do is, what they would miss most if they left the company. Often when you're asking this question, it's super important to add the caveat of excluding your fellow team members, because the reality is, even people that are unhappy, even people that are not thriving at your organization, most people create friendships with their team members, and they will have positive connections with fellow employees. What we're really trying to do when it comes to talent insights and talent branding is to get beyond the people themselves. What is the essence of this organization that makes people thrive here? Understanding that the people are going to change, but there's some core essence of that organization that remains even as new people come and old people leave the organization.
Hey, Marty, can I ask you, what's market A, market B, market C, market D?
Yeah, Graham, you want to swap back real quick?
Yep. I think I'm back there. So
there you go. So,
there we go. It should be there. So I could talk through that too, by the way. So there's a few different ways that we can segment all this data, right? So, in this particular example, we can look at breakdowns of high volume employees by specific locations. So in this case, if we have people that have 4 different locations for a call center or 4 different locations for a distribution center, like you want to know the differences in brand pillars or satisfaction across different locations. That market A, B, C, and D could just as easily, talk about different job groupings, right? Engineering, sales, customer service, marketing, and so on. So the beauty of this is, like, we have the ability to slice and dice this data, as needed based on the client goals and the client profile, right? So, in this case, we're visualizing the brand affinity and feedback by different markets. We do that by job groupings. The most important piece is how much data can we get in? And in this particular organization, I think what, Marty, was it, we had 1,300 people across 4 different markets that, were responding to provide collateral and data on this as well.
Yeah, and if you want to just swap back one more slide, Graham, or maybe even go on to the next one. This would be another good example. Yeah, here you can see we got this bar chart at the bottom. It's interesting once you've identified these personas. Again, we could do this by market, we could do it by department, we could do it by role group, and there's different ways. And it really depends on what the organization is structured like and what your goals are. But in this case, the client was particularly interested in understanding, okay, we've identified these personas. Well, how does this break out by market? What percentage of market A has this young and optimistic persona in it? And what percentage of market B, C, and D have this percentage? And you can see in this particular example, it looks like market C has a much larger share of young and optimistic in its employee population than the other markets. This has implications, obviously, for how we're going to market with recruitment marketing messages. Once we figure out what this person looks like and what they value and what our brand pillars are to attract young and optimistic, well, if we're advertising in market C, we probably are going to dial up those messages even more so. Market A and B might be better represented by a different persona, and we might want to tweak our messages to fit that persona in those markets as well. Let's just quickly show another one. In the interest of time, I won't belabor all the details of this one, but here's just another example of how you can bring a slightly different persona to mind. So hopefully you got a portrait of the young and optimistic as people who are in their early 20s, maybe college intenders, relatively bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, excited about their future, excited to find a place in an organization that has good training opportunities and kind of provide leadership as they figure out how they want to build their early career. Whereas here we found a different persona within the same employee population. And this one we called established and content. So these people are quite different in many ways. Whereas those other people, the young and optimistic, were young, non-white, most of them were single. Here we have a different population who is also thriving in the organization. These folks tend to be white, more likely to be men, more likely to be 35 plus. Many of them are married and have families. Some have been divorced recently. And they tend to have stayed at the organization a bit longer. So just hearing that high level overview of that person and their lifestyle, I think we might expect naturally that they might care about some different things when they're looking for an employer. And sure enough, we found out that they did. So, whereas the young and optimistic were very interested in commissions and bonuses and training and opportunities for advancement, this group is much more interested in having a competitive base pay. They're not so interested in having commissions and bonuses. I'm sure no one's going to be upset about getting a bonus, but what these people are focused on is more of a competitive, reliable salary that they can count on because they've got a family to feed. And they also care about work-life balance and PTO. Again, makes total sense given what we know about these people that have families. But I think it's interesting to see it come to life. And you can also see that, sure enough, that it does differ by market here. So in this case, market A is the most represented in terms of this established and consent persona. Won't read the quotes for you, but these quotes can be a great way of bringing them to life further. And these are great ways of focusing your recruitment marketing messages. A lot of video content, for example, is very popular these days. One of the mistakes, I don't know if we should call it a mistake, but one of the missed opportunities, let's say, we see with video content is people often ask very generic questions when they're as prompts for these videos. So you might just say, what do you like about working for Acme Company? When you do talent insights research and you can really hone in on the fact that, say, this particular persona is all about work-life balance and competitive base pay, well then, and you can see it in some of these comments, then when it comes time to record employee testimonial videos, well, we can structure prompts that are very targeted at the things that we know resonate, the messages that we want to be broadcasting to target talent. So we can have them talk about a time where, there was a personal issue at home and the leadership was very supportive and let him have the time off and it wasn't a problem. That's a really compelling story. It's a really compelling way of bringing the specific brand pillar to life and having a strategic approach to recruitment marketing rather than just having someone say, I really love my cubicle mate, Jim, because he's funny. I mean, that's an interesting story. We've all got those stories, but that doesn't really cut to that essence that we're talking about in terms of why people like working at the organization. Okay, so if we bring this all together, now we've got some idea of who these people are. the next thing that we do, and this is really where it makes a very clear case for where you should be focusing your recruitment marketing messages, is we deliver what's called a perceptual map to our clients. So this is really quite simple. It's a 2x2 grid. There's 2 dimensions on it. So left and right, we have different dimensions, the ones that we just showed on that spider diagram, things like compensation, benefits, work-life balance. We'll show you them all here in a minute. On the left-right axis, we're saying how important is this to the target talent persona that we just discovered. So on the left, things that are not so important. On the right, things that are more important. And then on the vertical axis, we're taking a look at those same dimensions, but through a different lens. Now we're not just interested in how important it is to the target talent. We're asking, what are our perceptions as an employer brand on those dimensions? So the things that we're particularly good at will be shown towards the top of this 2x2 grid. Things that we're not so good at will be shown towards the bottom. If you combine those 2 metrics and do this grid, you really can easily bucket your recruitment marketing messages, sometimes called employer brand pillars, into 4 categories. So the sweet spot is the upper right. These are things that we're really good at and that people think are important. This is where we should be focusing our recruitment marketing messages. On the upper left quadrant, you have things that are not as important to the target talent, but things that we happen to be doing a good job at. So probably not where you're going to start. It's not going to be the headline of your job description. These are more supporting strengths. They're nice to have, but it's not the lead message that we want to run with. And then on the bottom, you have some of the more concerning areas. These are the things that are in red. Bottom left is what we call latent weaknesses. These are things that we're perceived to do, not so good of a job as an employer brand, but they also don't happen to be very important to the client, to the target talent rather. And so, is it a problem? Not so much, because they're not actually expecting that out of you anyway. Certainly something you want to keep an eye on, but we kind of think of this as the no harm, no foul bucket. And then perhaps most concerningly is the liabilities bucket, this bottom right quadrant. These are things where people really say they're important. The target talent says, I really want opportunities for advancement. I'm just making this up. And it turns out they don't think we're very good at opportunities for advancement. Well, that's obviously a big liability, because there's a mismatch between what they're expecting of you and what you're delivering. This is, important to bring to the attention of senior leadership as things that we want to address, or certainly things that we don't want to be broadcasting in our recruitment marketing messages, because that's kind of the definition of inauthenticities. Again, saying we're really good at something, and then when people actually work at the organization, they find out not so much. So let's show what this actually looks like with a real persona. Here's the young and optimistic employer brand perceptual map. What is it that resonates with these people? Well, let's start by drawing your attention to that upper right quadrant, the things that are in that dark green. Supportive leadership, very important to them. Comfortable work environment. This was a surprise to this particular client. You wouldn't think like something as basic as having a comfortable desk and a comfortable chair would be one of the top things to be mentioning in your recruitment marketing messages. Turns out for this group, it is. It's something that we're good at and that they consider very important. And you can also see some secondary strengths here: training opportunities, opportunities for commissions and bonuses. What you're really looking for is the things on this diagram that are furthest away from the center, because that indicates polarization. So comfortable work environment, supportive leadership, those are the furthest away, top right. It means they're very important and we're also very strong at them. That's probably where you want to focus your recruitment marketing messages. Then what do we see in the supporting strengths? I think very interestingly, we see diverse workplace over here. This has been a hot topic these days. Turns out that this particular company has a very diverse workplace. People seem to be recognizing this. It's near the top of this chart, so indicating we have strong perceptions. But if you ask people in this target persona, how important is this in, considering where you want to work? It's not that important. So that's kind of a supporting strength. It's certainly not going to hurt to mention this in your recruitment marketing messages, but it's, again, probably not where you want to lead. And then just a few other things to call out on this slide. Medical, dental, vision insurance. I said things that are further out towards the edges are where usually there's some interesting insights. Well, I think this makes perfect sense. Again, this is a very young group, tend to be 18 to 24. They don't think we're very good at medical, dental, and health insurance, but it turns out they don't really care, which is kind of what you would expect out of that, demographic mindset. When I was 20, I don't think I even thought I could get sick. And I think we're seeing that on this employer brand perceptual map as well. Last but not least, we've got the vulnerabilities on the bottom right quadrant. I think the good news for this organization is these things are really close to that, center line. If they were much further down and to the right, this would indicate they're high importance and we have very low perception. So these are really kind of just early warning signs. And interesting to see pop on this is safe and sanitary workplace. Obviously this year, we did run this study this year, and COVID is top of mind for everyone. And you can see that certainly on the employer brand perceptual map here. Opportunities for advancement. This is something that's quite important to this group. They're not quite sure that we're that good at it. So either we need to do some soul searching as an organization and really up our game in terms of our advancement opportunities, or perhaps it's just a communication problem. Perhaps we're really good at providing opportunities and we're just not doing a good job of communicating it to employees. And then just to give you a contrast here, again, here's that second persona, establish and content. How does their perceptual map look a little different? Well, there's some commonalities. We saw supportive leadership being one of the core strengths for young and optimistic. We're seeing that here on this chart as well. I think that's a good sign, because the reality is, we have limited recruitment marketing budgets. We're not going to go out and have a high dollar campaign necessarily for every single target talent. So it's good to see some pillars that are resonating with both of these personas, but we do see some differences as well. So you can see work-life balance is important. It's in the core strengths here. Flexible schedules. Those kinds of things are quite important to this group, weren't so much to the young and optimistic persona. These are highlighting different ways that we might tailor these messages to focus on a particular target talent. You can also see in the latent, or rather the supporting strengths, again, we see diverse workplace. We're good at it. People don't necessarily care as much when they're deciding where to work. And a number of other things. Last, I just want to call out quickly the vulnerabilities. Competitive based pay. When we were looking at the persona, we knew that that was something that was important to this group. They're family people, they need a reliable paycheck. And here we're seeing a little bit of a red flag for this organization. They don't necessarily think we're that great at it, or at least it's not our strongest attribute. We're much better in terms of support or leadership, comfortable work environment, not so necessarily good at competitive based pay or paid time off. So those are, again, good warning signs for the executive team, things we may need to be thinking about addressing if we want to continue to retain talent in this persona. And then how do you actually bring this to life? So, here's a quick example of this, but what we started with were some of these very generic, frankly, kind of non-differentiating messages. Again, this is what comes out of the C-suite often, very, vague aspirational messages. Start your career with us. We're passionate about our employees. Join our passionate team. Not that they're bad messages, but again, does it really tell you anything about why someone in the target talent would want to work for you? Not so much. Doing a talent insight study like this, where we did come up with these detailed personas and then created these employer brand perceptual maps, we were able to hone in on the things that really matter to this, the target talent, the people that are going to thrive at your organization. And we bring it into an ad that looks like this. This is just one sample, but they were both of those target talents we know were very interested in supportive leadership, and that's one of our strengths. So let's lead with that. Here are careers that support your life.
Yeah, I was going to say, Marty, this is excellent, right? Because we always, we've got some mantras which we have here at Candidate.ID. And so one of the first, what really drives engagement, okay, is relevance and resonance, okay? So relevance is that this speaks to me, okay? It's kind of almost feels like personalized to me. They understand me, right? And resonance is that, this also speaks to me because it's at the stage of interest that I'm at. So I'm just learning about the company, or I'm learning about the culture, or I'm actually studying the job in more detail. So there's that kind of like three-dimensional matrix around relevance and resonance, right? But the most important thing is that, hey, look, if you're selling onions to an onions buyer, show them onions, right? Talk to them about onions, okay? And that's what's on the right here. That's onions. And the deeper that you go down into this, you get into more exotic onions, like banana shaped shallots and all that type of stuff. The worst thing you can do is show them vegetables, which is what's on the left, right? Because that's just wallpaper, and it doesn't differentiate you, it doesn't give you any competitive advantage, and it just alienates a bunch of people because it's lazy, right? It doesn't drive any relevance or engagement. And I kind of always come back to, I've got a few interesting questions for you, particularly around talent, but I ran Ariel in the UK for for a few years for Procter & Gamble. We were the second biggest brand in the UK at the time, behind Coca-Cola. We had a $37 million marketing budget, right? So when we came to do new advertising campaigns, these are big TV advertising campaigns. We'd be spending like $5-6 million behind one ad, right? That would run across like 9 months. We really had to dig into, you know, our ideal, you know, consumer profile. So for Ariel, it was, you know, with housewives with children. ABC won housewives with children. Okay, that was who we wanted to buy Ariel, and we were competing against Persil, right? And do you know what the hero move? This is really interesting. Do you know what the hero moment for a housewife with children doing the laundry is? Like the actual moment where they feel amazing about it, right? Okay, it's not the bit where you pull it out of the machine and it all smells great and looks clean. Okay, it's actually when it's all ironed and folded and put away and you close the door, close the closet door, right? And you put that in advertising and the target market goes, they understand me. That's the hero moment. That's my hero moment. They understand me. So that's the kind of level. I mean, we had a market research team at P&G just in the UK that was 120 people strong, doing this all the time across all the brands. So, but just coming back to, you know, it's onions, not vegetables, right?
Yeah,
Well,
I think
Mark,
that's well said. Oh, go ahead, Graham.
Well, I think you're going to already take my answer, but I was going to say, you know, why don't you talk a little bit more about the handoff, some of the handoffs that we've seen between some of this data and marketing teams at organizations too, because, you know, these types of perceptual maps, as Scott kind of alluded to, marketing teams are used to seeing this type of data. And, you know, we've seen that to be a great way to strengthen the connection between recruitment teams and marketing and actually telling them what you need, right? I think historically we've seen a lot of requests coming out of marketing where, or coming out of recruitment to, you know, to a marketing side and saying, hey, we need more content for our career site. It's what does that mean, right? Like how can we actually take the next steps? And this type of data, perceptual mapping, is really what makes sense to a marketing organization.
Yeah, well said, Graham. I mean, just hearing Scott talk there about his experience at P&G, I mean, this is where I grew up. This is where my career started. If you want to bridge the gap, and I think we see this challenge often in organizations between what's going on with recruitment marketing and what's going on with the consumer marketing, the branding team. You know, these people are very data-driven, data-focused. They have a very clear idea, as Scott just gave a great example of who this target customer is, what's meaningful to them, what is that moment that really resonates with them, and that is what dictates how they go to market in terms of their advertising strategy. And if you want to bridge the gap, I think one way of doing it is actually speaking their language. And what we mean by that is taking this very strategic analytical lens to the recruitment marketing challenge, figuring out, you know, what is that moment like folding all the clothes and putting it in the closet? What is that moment for your target talent? And that's what we're trying to do in some part with these personas.
Yeah, and I bet you your experience is that actually once when you do this type of work with talent teams, and they share that with their management and their marketing teams, the connection just becomes much deeper because they understand that they're getting it, right? Okay, now, the thing I always think that's quite interesting is, you know, the difference between the corporate brand and the employer brand, right? You know, I don't think you need a different strapline. Like the sign of a great brand promise or a great strapline is that you run it up the flagpole and everybody salutes. Okay, like Avis, we're number 2, so we try harder, right? Okay, Patagonia, committed to the core. Okay, it just tells you everything that you need to know about that brand promise, right? But that also, all you need to do from an employer point of view is just translate that into what it's like to work here, what it means, you know, kind of like for our people. And my experience is that it's always the job or the opportunity that creates the spark, right? Okay, that's like in advertising world, they always talk about it's the ad or whatever that creates the spark. All right, so it's always that the opportunity and how you package the opportunity that creates the spark, right? After that, people are interested in learning about the company. They're interested in learning about the culture. So they're trying to answer 2 questions. The first thing is, would moving to Acme be a great next move for me? Would that look good on my career? Right, that's the first thing. So they'll read the CEO's blog, they'll look at the corporate website, they'll understand what the senior management say, you know, they might look at the quarterly earnings report, all that type of stuff, right? And if it looks like it is a good move, You know, how are they transforming? Are they a leader? Are they a challenger? All that type of stuff. If that's a yes, right, then what they're trying to answer next is, could I do sustained, meaningful work there? You know, would I enjoy it? Okay, what's the culture like? Would I fit in? Would it be great, right? Could I be great there, right? Okay, and that's like looking at how the teams are organized. Who are the line managers? What do they say? What's the location? What's the culture? Trying to watch videos and things like that to get a sense of the culture. What's the coffee taste like? All that type of stuff, right? And if that's a yes, they'll come back to the job and they'll study the job in detail. Now, for passive talent, which is where we really focus on, which is in-demand talent, right? Passive talent who are not looking for jobs, right? They're not active. They're not filling out applications. They're not doing all that stuff, right? That there are different challenges in that area too. But what you've got to be able to see is they won't reply to you until they've answered all of those questions. Okay. So you're still, unless you can see their journey that they're on, you're flying completely blind out of it, right? Okay. So, you know, that Candidate.ID solves all those problems, right? Okay. But what Candidate.ID, the Candidate.ID, technology solution needs to be successful is, number one, the right data. So the right John and the right Janes, the right people that you want to attract who, meet your criteria for these particular roles. But also the right fuel from a content point of view to fuel the engagement engine. And that's what you guys are doing, right? You're developing the onions type content, if you get me, right? That triggers the spark and then leads them, onto this research journey.
Well, and we think of it as, across all of the different funnel stages for a candidate life cycle, like there are common threads, right? And what we try to tease out with Talent Insights is, what are those common threads that can be included across all of the touch points, right? Whether it's, cold emails, whether it's, landing pages that you've created, whether it's, data that you're sharing on Glassdoor, your, YouTube videos, like there are common threads that, a company is good at or a division is good at, and the candidate cares about. And like, that's where you want to live with your messaging, right? And also get an understanding like, hey, if there's something that, your internal talent doesn't think you're good at, is that accurate? And like, what can you do to move the needle there? Because we also find like leading indicators, it's not the purpose of, today's call on like, hey, like what's going to lead to turnover? If you find out people aren't happy and like, hey, people went there for leadership development and you're doing a really poor job at it, like, there are implications way beyond purely hiring people too. But it's that common thread across. And you can get the messaging right, but you also need an engine to deliver it. And again, that's where tools like Candidate.ID come in, right?
Yeah, I think the thing is that's this slide here, right? Everybody goes on this research journey. Okay. Now, it might happen very, very quickly in high volume, transactional type roles where, they're maybe out of work at the moment or they're very keen to move. So they might, do the research, decide, go, okay, in about 2 or 3 days or sometimes a week. Sometimes it can last a year or 2 years, right? But on average, it's about 6 months across 16 different independent touch points, right? And most of that is actually looking at the company and looking at the culture stuff. It can be a lot of third-party assets as well, right? But the point is that both John and Jane have gone to do this. Now, but unless you've got the technology, okay, so Jane's in Candidate.ID, right, for example, John's in CRM or ATS, they can't do all the complex cookie, pixel, fingerprint-based tracking, joining up all the different devices, all the different email addresses, all the different locations. They can't do that, right? So if you just go back a slide, Graham, if you're flying completely blind with John, you don't know whether to call him, you don't know whether to email him. So all you do is spam him with jobs, right? And your employer brand starts going backwards, right? Whereas if you can see Jane, okay, and each of those opens an email, clicks a link, views the landing pages, each of those gets a score and the score builds up, okay? And the scores that get closer to the jobs build higher. If you're a recruiter, you just call Jane or you email her and you encourage her to convert, right? As soon as she starts looking at the job spec, okay? So it's really, yeah, I mean, it's fundamental in in-demand talent. Okay, the ability to not be flying blind, right? And but you need the fuel at each of these stages, right? And you need a lot of it can be corporate marketing, a lot of it can be very, very kind of well developed, employer brand and recruitment marketing content, which you guys are developing. So if you go to the next slide. Because what you always want to see in terms of next level is once you know you're going to call Jane, you want to see within your ATS, you want to see exactly what it is that she's been doing, across the last 10 touch points. You want to see if that was, was that a marketing campaign? Was it a job board campaign? Was it a programmatic social? Because then you know what works, right? And then you want to see how the timelines and everything build up. So, and then the next slide. Yeah, so then you can, if that's interesting, you're going to call her, you can go and you're going to call him. You can say, okay, look, data science, he's smashing, 95% plus against what it is that we're looking for. He's scoring really high on intent, in terms of, he's obviously read a lot about the company. He's now started to bounce back on the job, and you can see specifically what it is that they've done. Okay, he's read about how we work. He's gone on to read the CEO blog. He's gone on to meet the team. He's now looked at the careers page, right? If you were a recruiter and you were going to call them or message them, you'd probably use the theme of the CEO blog as the hook here, right? Okay. So, and then the next slide. So you're going to call him. That's it.
I think so,
I've got a few questions for you, right? Because we've got like a couple of minutes left. How does it map? Firstly, how does it, so you've got the personas that you'd like to attract, and you've done the research within the company. As part of the research within the company, do you actually put another filter on it in terms of really breaking out the people that are kind of high performing and the type of employees that really work well in Acme? Do you really drill into that, or do you keep it fairly kind of general?
So I would say we can do that, but most organizations are not that sophisticated where even just the first step is a big leap forward, right? So I think, yes, that data can be done. The hardest part is, pulling data out of an HRIS system and actually measuring performance data. So can we do it? Yes. The reality is most organizations are not that sophisticated and ready for that. Marty, let me know if you feel strongly differently about that.
No, I think that's right, Graham. I mean, oftentimes we'll measure the impact of this on a higher level view. So if you do a talent insight study like this, you have your employer brand scorecard, you know what your NPS score is, you know how many people are planning to leave in the next year. Then you implement a more strategic recruitment marketing strategy. Well, hopefully if you rerun that survey a year later, you're going to see some of those brand health metrics increase. You're going to see a fewer number of people who want to leave sooner. You're going to see hopefully a higher proportion of your employees who fit into those target talent personas. Totally agree that it would be great to be able to do that on a one individual employee kind of level, but the challenge there is, again, connecting the HRS system.
And last question is, so if you've got a brand, right, a company brand, a corporate brand that's really powerful, and it's just the positioning's brilliant, like Avis, we're number 2, so we try harder. That tells you everything that you need to know about Avis compared to Hertz or Enterprise or the rest of them, right? Or Patagonia, committed to the core. How much do you springboard off that when you come into, employer brand?
I mean, I think those examples that you provided are great examples. It's really a question of how big of a consumer presence the brand has. So in the example that we showed here, this was more of a B2B company where most average Americans, for example, probably have not heard of the company. So there's less opportunity to create that synergy. But if you think of a major company like Patagonia, where everyone's heard of them, well, in that case, there's a huge amount of equity. I mean, this is what the consumer marketing department has been doing since Patagonia came alive, is building that equity in the brand, understanding who the target customer is. And many of the target customers, in terms of who's going to buy Patagonia products, are also potential candidates, job candidates. So in that case, yeah, there is a real synergy, and it'd be foolish to start from scratch when you already know so much about what the corporate brand is and why people love it. I mean, we often think about it in terms of understanding what consumers like about your corporate brand. Then you need to find the people who are passionate about delivering that experience. And that's the connection between the talent brand and the corporate brand.
Yeah, and I think there's a couple of closing thoughts here are, yeah, often the companies that really need this stuff are the ones that don't have a dominant consumer brand. You know, they're not that well known, or they're not as well known as their competition. So the two kind of mantras in there are, how is it that they can use how is it that, you know, smaller or slightly weaker companies can use technology to crush bigger competition? Okay, move faster, all that type of stuff, and all the great, you know, insights and material that you guys have developed. That's the first one, is how can you use new stuff to crush competition? Because you don't have to be the best, you just got to be better than your competition. And then the other great thing within marketing is that idea about, you know, the ability to use technology, which translates into, you know, what marketeers, you know, need to stop cutting down trees and start sharpening their axe. You know, and just think about sharpening your axe. Just stop cutting down trees, right? Just sharpen the axe, sharpen the axe, sharpen the axe, you know?
Yeah. Well, and, you know, I think that's a great, you know, great place to kind of end today too, because, you know, our big belief is, you know, it is easy to get contact information and data on candidates. You know, the companies that are going to succeed the most are the ones that like do have the ability to, you know, pay hyper close attention to, you know, the candidate journey, what people are actually doing, how they're engaging with content, because, you know, it's very rare where you're going to wake up tomorrow as a software engineer and decide, you know what, I'm just going to go search for jobs and start applying. Let me go to one job board. And, you know, this doesn't happen. And, you know, the smartest companies are starting to realize that, boy, like if we could start thinking about consumer, start investing in our messaging, understanding what we're good at, like this is where, you know, companies are going to be able to take a big leap forward, you know, in building out a true, you know, recruitment marketing engine.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
That's our belief fully. So.
Yeah, and it's got to be an engine's key. It's got to be an engine, right? It's got to be going all the time, right? And how do you build a high performance engine, and how do you build a high performance team to build that engine, and people, processes, technology, the whole lot. Look, I've got to go because I've got to take Ronald to football. Okay, so hey, I really appreciate you guys getting up so early in the morning from Seattle to join us. It's been excellent as always, and we'll record the on-demand version. I'll get it over to you. We'll share it with everybody. That I think we had like quite a few hundred registrations, and we'll go from there.
Thanks, Scott.